This past Sunday, my daughter was part of a gathering at the Museum of Tolerance that included many survivors and their families and many motivated teens that's motivated like Museum of Tolerance. Teens and their families sat with survivors and their families. My daughter also played a couple of songs for the group on her guitar. My entire family was there to see the moving program. We were super proud of her. When we arrived, we entered the elevator to go up to the program. And standing inside the elevator was a little old man with his caretaker. I immediately turned to him and thanked him for being there and told him that it was an honor to spend the afternoon with him. And then he looked me in the eyes and he asked me if I knew his good friend Menachem Begin. I smiled, not sure if he was serious. In all honesty, I wasn't sure if he had lost his mind. Very respectfully, of course, I answered that of course I knew Menachem Begin. I'd read a lot about him. He told me matter-of-factly, if I knew Menachem Begin like he knew Menachem Begin, I would have been willing to die for Menachem Begin like he was willing to die for Menachem Begin. It started to get a little bit tense in the elevator. I nodded and said again that from everything that I've ever read about him, from his autobiography to biographies, it seemed like he was absolutely right. And then I asked him out of curiosity, how do you know Menachem Begin? This little old man answered me, the Irgun. He said to me, did you know that the King David Hotel was blown up? I nodded yes. I was a child when I learned the story of the Irgun's bombing of the King David Hotel in July 1946. I knew of the preceding Shabbat called the Black Sabbath, in which the British raided Jewish offices and homes throughout pre-state Israel and arrested approximately 2,500 Jews. That Shabbat immediately followed a horrific pogrom in Poland. Of course, after the Shoah had already ended, Menachem Begin and others correctly blamed the British immigration policies to Palestine as one of the reasons why Jews were trapped and subjected to such violence in Europe before, during, and after the Shoah. Then the man turned to me and he said, I was the one. I blew up the King David Hotel, and I'm not sorry. And the elevator doors opened, and he walked out, and I had a Selichot sermon. Later during the program, I read this man's introduction. He was liberated from Auschwitz and ended up in Israel, serving in the Irgun during the Yishuv, and then fought for Israel in the War of the Independence. Sure enough, he was in fact who he claimed that he was. It's not every day that one brushes up against a man who shaped Jewish history. I looked around the room that afternoon, surrounded by living Jewish history, and couldn't help but feel like we're on the brink of an end of a chapter. At this time of year, we recognize that life is fragile, time is fleeting. Inspiring catalysts for change in the Jewish world live amongst us now, and we may no longer have them at the close of 5783. This is the unpredictability expressed in the Unatana Tokef prayer on Rosh Hashanah. Who will live and who will die, we ask through the Machzor. We recognize it again during Yizkor on Yom Kippur. I've brushed up against Jewish history before. I was raised with grandparents who were trapped and suffered through Jewish history, and then who gave birth to a new chapter of Jewish history. I've studied with impactful teachers, and I've met legendary Jewish politicians. And it seems to me very much like we are living right now through a transition in which one chapter is coming to a close and another may be about to open. Many in the Jewish world just returned from Basel, Switzerland, from a celebration of the 125th anniversary of Herzl's convening of the first World Zionist Congress in 1897. I don't want to spoil the convention for you in 1897, but as it turned out, Herzl was right. Zionism succeeded. Israel was not only born, it's thriving. While 125 years seems like a long time ago for us, in the context of Jewish history, it's a drop in the bucket. Only twice before in our history, under King David in 1000 BCE, and then under the Maccabees in the 2nd century before the Common Era, did we enjoy self-rule, political freedom in our ancestral homeland. Yitzhak Ber was a great Jewish historian of the 20th century. He was appointed professor of medieval Jewish history at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem in 1930. In 1947, he published his history of the Jewish people and called it Galut. In it, he argued that Galut, or diaspora, is not a place, it's a mindset, it's a worldview. Galut argued that all of Jewish history occurred within larger social frameworks and historical movements. Different outside influences have tugged and pulled Jewish history backward and forward throughout the ages. It means that as Jews, we fundamentally lack agency. That's not who we are anymore. Herzl, Begin, and many others inspired Jews to rise up and say no more to that worldview. Galut, the mindset, thank God, is over. Those Jews broke the shackles of Galut. They changed the Jewish world, and they changed the world itself. My reaction to the commemoration of the first World Zionist Congress is, what's the next great Jewish idea? Who amongst us will become part of the next great chapter of Jewish history? In his treatise, The Jewish State, Herzl warned the Jewish people, old prisoners do not willingly leave their cells. The Jewish future does not have to only be crafted by others. That way of thinking reflects being trapped in ourselves. We have to grasp Jewish history and shape a Jewish future together. And I think this is a good time and a good place for us to begin dreaming throughout the high holidays, beginning tonight. On Yom Kippur, the liturgist tells us, Ki hine kachomer beyad hayotzer, which means that we are like clay in the hand of the potter. I recite this every year and sincerely believe that we are clay, but our ultimate shape has limitless possibilities. How would we like to shape or reshape ourselves moving into the new Jewish year? When I was a child, there was a commercial that played on TV that demanded, whenever it appeared, my brother or my sister or I would scream out for the others to hurry, 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 it's on, come into the room and watch it. It was a Gatorade commercial that featured Michael Jordan, and the theme song was Be Like Mike. Now, I'm from Chicago, and so it was a sacred, sacred piece of text. But are other people in this room familiar with Be Like Mike? Yes. Sometimes I dream that he is me. I'm contractually obligated to not sing more than just a few bars. The cantors get very nervous. It showed Michael Jordan smiling, laughing, effortlessly dunking a basketball, and children playing basketball with their tongues out, dressed exactly like him, just like we were dressed like him. And of course, everyone in the commercial happily drank all different colors of Gatorade. While I can reminisce more about this 1-minute commercial that meant so much to us, Gatorade has simply not paid VBS enough for this advertisement. And so my point is that we all understood from the 1 minute before the 1 minute, that Michael Jordan was an athlete to be emulated. He tried his best. He always remained focused. He looked like he was having fun. He enjoyed competition. To be a better athlete meant to be like Mike. And when we tell our children, or our friends, or frankly, ourselves, to be better Jews, who is the Jew that we point to and say, be more like her, or be more like him? If we lack an answer, why aren't we trying to become that person this year? What's holding you back from all of us wanting to be like you? The Torah points us to grow up to be wise and strong and rational and humble like Moshe Rabbeinu, or loving of our people and forgiving like Miriam and Aaron. The Talmud clearly encourages us to be like Rabbi Akiva and pursue knowledge no matter our age and teach Torah no matter the restriction. I grew up presented with figures like Herzl and David Ben-Gurion and Menachem Begin and Golda Meir, and even Sandy Koufax hangs on the wall of my office. Who is next to stand as a role model for our people? Could that person be sitting in this room right now? Selichot is the beginning of a 2-week reflection about becoming the best version of ourselves, about making a difference. Each of us has the ability to shape the Jewish future, our own future, our family's future, even our entire people's future. Ki hine kachomer, we're not yet our finished versions. Each of us can decide on one thing. Do one thing for our community by which we can be remembered. Ki hine kachomer, we are not only clay, we can also decide to be the sculptor. When somebody stops you in an elevator years from now, and you can offer your life story in 2 minutes or less, what accomplishment will you want to share with that young, doubtful pisher? What about your life will you be so proud of that it'll be in the introduction in a luncheon? For our own sake, and for the sake of our people, it's time that we get to work. Thank goodness, nobody here expects any of us to have to defeat a colonial force. And thank goodness, and I really mean this one, thank goodness nobody here expects any of us to dunk a basketball. But we should expect more from ourselves. We can devote more time and energy and resources to Jewish learning and Jewish practice and Jewish identity. We can serve this community, this synagogue better. And if that's true, if you think there's a kernel of truth in that, then I ask you, what are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? May we all be sealed for a year of goodness, of health, of happiness, of dreaming of a better Jewish future together, a year of becoming the best version of ourselves, a year in which we all recognize our growth, a year in which we all turn to one another and want to be like you. Shana Tova.